I'm just curious. Do you think that Trump is a Christian?
No.
Hell no.
No.
Oh,
He's like, my favorite book is Corinthians 2.
That's where something like the election, which is a really important thing, I know to a lot of Trump supporters, believing that the 2020 election was stolen, there's just no place where that's been in an official capacity brought forward. Trump's legal team had 60 plus times in court to do so. And there were moments where Giuliani was asked by judges, are you bringing forward evidence of voter fraud? And he would say, no, I'm not. So how am I supposed to be convinced that the election was stolen if there's no actual material evidence of it?
So again, we're not looking to answer that question. What we're looking at is how the Trump supporters answer that question and whether or not those answers we think are representative of what other Trump supporters think. Well, in Texas, I think Trump voters are more rounded than more well-rounded, you mean, than Biden voters. They seem to be more knowledgeable about more subjects, while Biden voters seem to just be suffering from TDS. So I don't necessarily agree with this. I think that when it comes to being well-rounded, I get what you're saying, but I think that really comes from a very narrow view of, we want to live this godly life. And not that that's necessarily a bad thing. You guys know that I'm all for Christian values, but it's not. It seems to cover more areas that if your basis is God, then you get to what could seem like being more well-rounded. But I think, I don't think it would be controversial to say that if you are in more left-leaning circles, you're very much more likely to have, more, data-based type conversations. And not that you're not going to use them on the right, but I mean, we all know how lefties love to stick their nose in a book, right? David, any response to what Glomtech is saying here?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that very few communities were more closed-minded and had sort of the same line of thought as my hometown, which was incredibly conservative. I think it voted 90+% in favor of Donald Trump. Granted, that's just a echo chamber by definition, and so
right.
You're going to get a lot of those same types of thought. And so as a whole, I think it's probably true that liberals like data more and try to base more of their opinions on studies and academia as opposed to conservatives.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that definitely invokes the Dunning-Kruger effect a lot. But I don't think it's that, like, Melty, do you find it controversial just to say that when you're on the left, you're more likely to see studies being brought out and instead of like just the philosophy of the value that we want, because you know what I mean?
Yeah, I would definitely say so. You definitely see yourself more, because I've talked in Temple server and I've talked in Destiny server, and when you argue in Temple server, they don't want you to bring up, like, it's not about bringing up articles. It's about how you feel about the topic and what they know personally. But when you talk on Destiny server, they want to bring up articles and everything. And then even the articles you bring up won't make them happy because it's not the articles they like.
And and so that's why, it's not saying that one is better than the other. I prefer to, I prefer to do the reading of whatever it is, and come to the conversation with somebody else who has also done either the same reading or reading to the contrary, so that two people can have the discussion. I don't like the type of debate that's just like, okay, here's this study, here you take that study, and it's like, an MCU third act, but instead of laser beams, it's studies and articles. And but again, as you said, in the Timcast server, there's a lot of this same exact type of conversation, even if we're talking about a different topic, because it's just God. It's just, well, God and demons and it's evil, and that has its place, but. Go ahead.
It just has to do, like, they always go, it's like whenever you bring up anything or you talk about anything, they want to talk about, like, when I talk about voting Vivek there, they want to say, well, do you trust someone that's a non-Christian to run this country? And I'm
great
like, what does that really have to do with anything? If, like, so what if he's not Christian? What if his values have Christian ideas and everything like that? But he's really not a Christian, so can you really trust him? It's like, how are you supposed to? There's been tons of Christians in the world that have lied their asses off to get money, and and you just, because they say they're Christian, you're going to believe them.
I'm just curious. Do you think that Trump is a Christian?
No.
Hell no.
No.
He's like, my favorite book is Corinthians 2.
Yeah.
So it looks like we have Devon, our guest, in the back. Thumbs up if you are ready, Devon. All right. Word up. So let's keep that here. Beautiful. All right. Welcome to the party. So, we hadn't really gotten too far off the ground. We've really just been talking about how, so many of these discussions are around the politicians themselves. And what we're really looking to do with this discussion is talk about the voters. And so I don't know if you're familiar with the video that we're talking about here with Mochas with MAGA.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
So perfect. Thank you, David. So that is where you can find Devon. And
right.
So I think instead of focusing on what is Trump doing, what is Biden doing, what is Vivek doing, what is this person doing, if we take a look at what the voters are actually saying and break that down into, is that really what most Trump or Biden voters think? And again, for the purpose of this conversation, we're just going to simplify it, and you're either in the Trump camp or the Biden camp. That doesn't mean anything outside of this conversation. And yeah, so I guess the last thing that we were saying was that Guamtech had said that Trump voters are more well-rounded than Biden voters, and that Biden voters seem to be just suffering from TDS. And I, as in this case on the Trump side, was talking about. We were just talking about how I don't agree with that, because I think that the well-roundedness comes from a widespread agreement on Christian values. We got to be Christian, and so much comes from that. And so any thoughts on that one point that Trump voters are more well-rounded than Biden voters?
Just to the floor, or anybody specifically?
To you, yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I just got off work. I'm a little.
You get.
All right. I have to heavily disagree. I mean, I guess it depends on who we're talking about, but if we're talking about in general, more than likely not. I feel like a lot of them, where their information comes from, it's usually from the man himself. And if there's any additional information, less of them are actually doing any independent research. They're just watching their pundit sort of repeat those things, as opposed to them actually getting, like, cross-referencing information from the other side in order to reach an actual truth. So, I mean, I just disagree with that.
Yeah, so it sounds like we, despite, so again, just for, the dividing lines for this conversation, again, just for the purposes of the conversation, this isn't meant to pigeonhole anybody, but just so we understand that myself and Melted Mind Media are going to be more in the Trump camp, and David and Devon are going to be more in the Biden camp. Yeah, I agree with that. And we were just talking about how Melted Mind Media was saying, if you go in the Timcast Discord server, then, it's the same conversation over and over and over and over and over again, because it's just religion, and there's nothing else there. And because of that's a very philosophical thing, then you don't necessarily have to have data to back up your personal beliefs on this thing. Whereas you go into the Destiny server, and it's very academic, and that can be good or that can be bad. As who said it? Zippy's saying fake data is unhelpful. A lot of statistics are not exemplary of the real world processes. Rather than conspiracy, I look at the ebbs and flows of processes in the real world. And so I think that sounds like we're all pretty much in agreement that that's the way or that's a difference between these two camps. And it doesn't necessarily mean one is better, but just to keep that open. So as we're watching, that's what we want to look at. So we'll back this up. Actually, Luke had just asked. Luke is his name.
Yep.
Trump's leading the election, which is a really important thing. I know to a lot of Trump supporters believing that the 2020 election was stolen. There's just no place where that's been in an official capacity brought forward. Trump's legal team had 60 plus times in court to do so. And there were moments where Giuliani was asked by judges, are you bringing forward evidence of voter fraud? And he would say, no, I'm not. So how am I supposed to be convinced that the election was stolen if there's no actual material evidence of it?
Well, they keep stopping these guys from doing their job. They're doing their work, and it takes time. It takes a whole lot of time to come up with facts and figures, and that's what we're doing right now.
Based on your spirituality.
Well, did anybody even understand what she said?
I think she. Oh, go for it.
I think she was saying that they need more time to find the votes, and they need the work and find like they just need more time to find evidence.
Yeah, to like build a case and whatnot, and like put everything together in order to prove. But I mean, they did have time, so.
Yeah, and I was gonna say this. I don't know when this was recorded, but this came out September 21st. Was that 7-8 days ago? So I mean,
yeah.
At this point, I think so. Let me, Devon. I'll throw the question that I threw to David earlier. If you had to put a percentage on, again, we're talking broadly, Trump camp and Biden camp. Anybody who's going to vote is going to be in one or the other for the purpose of this conversation. What percentage of the Trump camp do you think believes that Trump either is the president, or that there was rules that were broken that allowed Biden to be president?
You're saying they give a percentage for each of those, or
so
a
just
percentage for people?
Yeah, of the Trump voters. What percentage of Trump voters do you think? I think there was something that different than changing the rules. That rules were broken. There was fraud. Something specifically that Biden is not the president, or not legitimately the president.
I actually think there was a poll on this too, and if I'm going with my gut feeling, probably, sadly, like 80 something percent at this point.
80%.
I say this because I've interacted with a lot of Trump supporters that I've talked to in real life. They're outside of politics and everything. They're usually very civil and very reasonable, very calm. But when it comes to the specific Trump phenomenon, you can find people like that who still do believe that Biden isn't the legitimate president and it was stolen from Trump and everything, because I feel like that's the major driver of the whole like Trump ideology anyway. But
I'm looking at a Monmouth poll, and it says 61% of Republicans still believe Biden didn't win fair and square. That's a
and that's why I wanted
figure.
Yeah, I didn't get polled for that.
Yeah, exactly. First of all, we're bringing up polls, and we got to bring up methodology, sample size, and all of that stuff.
I'm just saying, like,
but hold on. Does it change the question?
To November 20th, and it's like 60, 65, 62, 61.
I do want to say I'm glad that he said that too, because I'm not the kind of person, like, with polls in general, I try to not use them too much, just because I know how they can like differ from reality or differ from other polls and everything. And I understand that, so it's like I kind of take that with a grain of salt, but. Yeah.
Well, and again, this is I was gonna specifically say, so that personally, I do believe that the changing of the rules with the mail-in ballots, the fact that the Hunter Biden laptop story was suppressed, those two things alone, I think if those didn't happen, then Trump would be the president. But those things did happen, and mail-in ballots were legal, and so love it, hate it, or otherwise, that's what happened. And so I would not be in the camp of saying Biden is not the legitimate president, even though I think that there was fuckery in the process. So does that change? Does that change your answer from 80 to a little bit lower, or no?
Well, I mean, mine was just sort of like a gut feeling anyway. If there is a poll of 60%, like I'm not gonna take it like for sure, but I mean. I'm not really like married to my number either with that. But I do know people who like hold your position with that, or who focus less on the actual like ballots are being stuffed and all that stuff. And it's more so like the Hunter Biden story was suppressed and everything. The reason why, and I'm not sure this is what you were getting at, but the reason why like that doesn't really like, I guess, matter to me is we're just going off of if this thing in history would have happened, then this person would have won, and you could make a case for like multiple things. So it's whenever I hear people use that to say that it was stolen, I'm just like, it's still not compelling.
Yeah, I completely agree. That's why I think that whether it's Trump himself or the voters talking about what happened in 20, it's not helping anybody. It's not helping anybody. Let it go. Let it go.
Yeah.
All right. Anybody before we dive back in?
Well, talking about the voting, like it's the past. Hindsight's 2020, but the past is the past. Dwelling on this is not going to help the winning future elections at all. And every time Trump brings it up, it just makes, I think it makes him look worse.
Yep.
Makes him lose voters.
Agreed.
Can
Agreed.
I ask a question on the mail-in voting?
Sure.
If there hasn't been any substantial evidence of any sort of fraud, then what exactly is wrong with people voting by mail?
Inherently nothing. Inherently nothing. Real quick, let me shout out Nick Alexander. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the party. We will get to that in a moment. I just want to answer David's question, but welcome to the party. So, there's nothing wrong with having mail-in ballots. We've had absentee ballots forever. The problem is that it creates an imbalance because of how geographical areas will vote. And so, if you're collecting Democrat ballots and you go to New York City, you can collect 7,000 ballots in one building. Whereas if you go to West Virginia, then in that same amount of time, you're going to be able to go to 3 homes. And so it creates an inherent imbalance.
That
So
just sounds like more people are getting to vote, and more people just happen to be Democratic in that sense, right?
Well,
theoretically,
but if you think about it this way, so if there's 2 things I want to bring up. So first with glitches, it's so let's say you can only get to 3 Virginia houses in that same amount of time. So for all those people in Virginia, they have to drive. They might have to drive now to go vote, or like if they might not be able to mail in ballot, like they might have a problem with their mail in ballot issue, like they'll have to drive there. It's just less people to collect. But also the other point that I want to bring up is, let's say Republican or Democrat, they have a kid that just turned 18 that lives with them. And they're like, "No, mom, I don't want to vote. I don't care about that." And they're like, "No, I'm going to have it sent to the house. And then I'm going to fill it out for you. And you're going to sign it, or you're not going to live here anymore." And they've like threatened to get their vote.
yep, we've heard a lot of stories of that. So again, it's nothing inherently wrong with that thing. And to your point about there being more people voting, I first of all, I don't necessarily think it's a good thing that more people are voting, because more people are not paying attention to stuff. So the idea that more people are voting should be a good thing. But I am all for having some type of civics test, like Vivek Ramaswamy is saying, especially for the 18 to 25-year-olds. It's I mean, there's the old saying that if you're not a liberal when you're young, you have no heart. If you're not conservative when you're older, you have no brain. That's a saying for a reason. Liberal, democratically liberal ideas tend to appeal to those who know less about the system, which doesn't necessarily mean that they're right or wrong, but the way that it's packaged is much more like I don't even want to use the word propaganda, but just the messaging is I'll say better. The Democrats definitely are better at messaging than Republicans.
No, I will disagree with you.
That's
there.
yeah. I was gonna say. I think it's the exact opposite.
You
Like
think
that
Okay.
for the longest time,
Yeah.
like Democrat messaging is just like you're a victim, you're a victim, you're a victim. The world, there's nothing you can do. Like everything's against you and everything. And like the conservative stuff is just like, oh, like at least like online too. It's like, where you gotta take care of your family. You're the man of the house, and like you're patriotic, and like it's much more uplifting. But to your point about the shoot, I forgot. You were talking about more people being able to vote, and people being younger, and when you get older, it's because you sort of like know more. I have like a different theory on that, and I only say that because there are people who are very wise who are older that are still Democrats.
Absolutely.
I think it's just a matter of when people age, they get more complacent and they get more like they're very stuck in their ways in a sense. So like I even noticed it when I grew up with certain people who are my age. Once they got older, their minds sort of closed to being like the world is changing. I like the way it is. I don't like new music. I like the music that I grew up on and everything. So as you get older, you see the world change, and you're probably more likely to have more conservative values because that's more the traditional leaning stuff than all of the new stuff that comes out. You're probably going to be more opposed to that as you grow older.
Well, and two, whenever you get older, the economic system that we have tends to work more in your favor as well, right? In terms of capitalism, it's a lot easier to gain money if you already have a whole lot of money and you can invest that instead, right? You're also not very concerned about things like the cost of education whenever you're in your 50s, right? So I think the factors that play into the lifestyles of different demographics also really influences the kinds of parties that they tend to vote for.
Like, so then what do you say about like people that leave like like communist countries and stuff like that and come to America, and then they appreciate, like, they were born in like communist countries or and stuff like that, and they were raised in those with those values, yet they still try to come here and escape communism.
What is
Like, so like he's
So
saying like
in Cuba, for example.
yeah, like Cuba, Venezuela, stuff like that, or like even other countries where, like, you know, they've got other problems. Like they're raised with these values and they grow up and with this, like, that as their generation, yet they still try to leave because how bad it is.
Mm-hmm.
So like, yeah, I don't think
you might be going a one step ahead, because we're talking about the average Democratic voter, and I don't think the average Democratic voter is like rah rah communism, rah rah socialism. I mean, unless you guys disagree.
That's what I was trying to figure out.
The system is different also in like countries like Cuba, or what's the other one? Venezuela is the one that gets pointed to.
Not even communist countries,
China,
but like,
I guess, but like.
Not even communist countries. Let's say like Mexico or like other countries that are just, they may have capitalism and stuff like that, but they're not doing as well off as America.
Okay, so to be clear, you're saying that people's values change from. Are you trying to say that, like, are you trying to just ascribe communism in like this?
No, I'm not saying
communism. Just by saying.
No, I'm not saying that communism. I'm not saying like that's the left. I'm just saying like he was saying, you grow up with these ideas and you see as they change over time, you don't like that because you don't like the new, so you want to revert to the old. But but then there's people that grow up in situations and they grow up with this mentality of like wanting to be there, and that's what they grow up with, but yet they still try to escape that and come to America or go to other countries.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, I guess that's just more so like whatever is happening like around them in general. Mm-hmm. Like if fuck shit's, I mean, if bad stuff, I don't know what we can say on this.
Well, like, even if you want to say like Americans here that want to leave America and want to go to like Canada, or they want to, I don't like it in the US, they want to leave. Like it's like people grow up and they still want to leave America. Like I know plenty of people that are older, they just can't afford it.
Yeah, yeah. I know what you're saying now. You're just saying like as some people get older and there's still like a desire to sort of change certain things that even if you're used to them.
Yeah, like I would say it's not really you grow up and you want your old ways to stay the same. I think it's the values that you grow up with. Those are more of what decide your future and what you want to do with your life going beyond, more than you want to keep your old ways the same. Because if you're growing up by more, let's say you're in progressive era and you're grown by conservative parents, or the vice versa, you're going to probably want more democratic views in a conservative area, or more conservative views in a democratic area. You know what I'm saying? Like it's more about what how you're raised, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I think that might be a little bit of a reflection of your age, because I think that's a thing that you go through. Like once you're, you grow up in your parents' house, and then there's a period where it's like, oh, I have to rebel against them, and then as an atheist, I am definitely, rebelled against my parents wanting me to be a Christian. But as a Bernie bro in 2015. I'm now saying like, I think Trump's the way to go. So I understand what you're saying, but I don't know if that's necessarily a political thing as much as it is a maturity thing, just in general. Thanks so much for watching, guys. If you enjoyed that clip, check out the full live stream link in the bio, and catch me live every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern. See you there.